What happens when a billionaire's carefully crafted lie crashes headfirst into a woman whose truth can't be silenced? Rodrigo Sanchez thought hiring a street musician for one night would be the perfect cover to outsmart his ruthless ex-wife. But Riley's haunting voice and untamed spirit did more than play along. They cracked open a heart he thought was long frozen. Now, with his empire crumbling and the city's elite watching his every move, Rodrigo must face a choice he never saw coming. But when everything falls, will the one woman who never faked a thing still be there to catch him? If powerful stories of love, loss, and redemption move you, hit that like button. It helps more people discover love stories worth telling. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love connecting with you. And be sure to subscribe and ring that bell, because every story I share is chosen to make you feel something real. Rodrigo stared out his office window, watching Chicago's skyline blur in the evening haze. His phone buzzed, a name he hadn't seen in months, Jessica. He almost ignored it. Almost. Rodrigo, came her silky voice. Still drowning in spreadsheets and shareholder meetings? What do you want, Jessica? His voice was flat, tired. I'm getting married. She paused, letting the words sink in. To someone who actually knows what love means. We're having a party next weekend. You should come. Silence. Oh, but you'll be alone, won't you? Still the same cold, empty Rodrigo who can't keep a woman interested past dessert. Her laugh was sharp. I told everyone you'd show up solo. Prove me wrong if you can. The line went dead. The next morning, Rodrigo found himself wandering through Millennium Park, his head pounding from sleepless hours. He needed air, space, something. Then he heard it. A voice like warm honey, raw and real, drifting through the morning mist. He followed the sound until he found her. A young woman with auburn hair cascading over her shoulders, guitar in her lap, singing to the empty pathways. She wore faded jeans and a leather jacket that had seen better days. Her guitar case lay open with a few scattered bills inside. But her voice, it could stop traffic. When she finished, their eyes met. You have talent, he said simply. I have a name too, she replied defensive. Riley. Rodrigo. He hesitated. I have an unusual request. She raised an eyebrow. I don't do anything illegal. Not illegal. Just complicated. I need a date for one evening. A wedding party. Riley laughed. You look like the type who has women lined up for blocks. It's my ex-wife's wedding. The words came out heavier than he intended. She's expecting me to show up alone. Riley crossed her arms. And you want me to play dress up? You'd be paid well. Very well. She studied his face. Why me? Because you're real. She wouldn't see you coming. Riley shook her head. I sing in parks, Rodrigo. I don't belong in fancy ballrooms. That's exactly why you'd shine. She laughed bitterly. Pretty words. Rodrigo took a breath. I'll pay for your father's medical bills. The laughter died. Her eyes narrowed. How do you know about that? I saw your face change when someone dropped a 20 instead of a 5. Lucky guess. Long silence. One night, she said finally. But you better make it worth it. The boutique on Michigan Avenue sparkled with gold mirrors and soft lighting. Riley stood stiffly as stylists fluttered around her with silk and satin. Rodrigo sat quietly, watching without comment. The fifth dress was deep emerald green. Elegant but not flashy, stunning but still her. That one, he said when she stepped out. Riley looked at herself in the mirror. Feels too fancy. You're playing a part, but you still look like Riley. She nodded, then pulled out a worn silver necklace. This stays. My grandmother's. It works perfectly. By evening, they were in his downtown apartment. All glass and Sanchez and cold perfection. Riley stared at the marble kitchen. You actually cook in here? Rodrigo rolled up his sleeves. Used to cook for my dad when he was sick. Old habits. She opened a drawer and blinked. You organized your spices alphabetically. Efficiency. You're definitely a serial killer. As he chopped vegetables with practiced precision, Riley tried to help. Her knife work was chaotic. Onions flew everywhere. I'm officially banned from sharp objects, she declared, backing away dramatically. Rodrigo stepped behind her, guiding her hands. Like this. Steady grip. The kitchen filled with the smell of garlic and herbs. Simple pasta, fresh bread, nothing fancy. So, Rodrigo said as they ate, Jessica will ask what you do. I'll say I'm a singer. Coffee shops, street corners, birthday parties. Tell her you sing to live, not to impress. Riley tilted her head. You like correcting people. I like honesty. She raised her water glass. A toast. To what? To desperation. The only reason we're not drinking wine. They clinked glasses. To low expectations, Rodrigo added. And to pretending, Riley said softly. He looked at her. This doesn't feel like pretending. Not yet, she whispered. The grand ballroom at the Palmer House gleamed with crystal and gold. Waiters glided between tables as Chicago's elite mingled in designer gowns and $1,000 suits. Rodrigo entered first, composed as always. But when Riley stepped beside him, the room shifted. She moved like music, graceful but unforced. No diamonds, no designer jewelry. Just her grandmother's silver necklace catching the light. Yet conversation stopped. Heads turned. Jessica stood near the center, surrounded by admirers. When she saw them, her smile faltered. Rodrigo, she purred, venom wrapped in silk. You found someone interesting. Jessica. Riley's voice was calm, polite. Jessica's eyes swept over Riley with practiced disdain. Did you find her busking outside Union Station? I perform there sometimes, Riley replied evenly. Great acoustics. How quaint. If by quaint you mean unforgettable, then yes. Rodrigo bit back a smile as they moved away. Jessica stood frozen, her perfect composure cracked. Your ex has claws, Riley murmured. She collects people like trophies, keeps them until they lose their shine. Riley noticed an elderly couple by the window, fingers intertwined after decades together. She approached them gently. Congratulations on your anniversary. 55 years tomorrow, the woman beamed. Riley pulled out a small notebook and sketched quickly. 2 faces, gentle lines, a lifetime of love captured in pencil. When she handed it over, the woman pressed it to her heart, tears in her eyes. Rodrigo watched from across the room, something shifting in his chest. Before he could speak, Jessica's voice cut through the music. Riley, dear, she called sweetly, since you perform publicly, would you sing for us? The room went quiet. Rodrigo tensed. Riley smiled. Of course. She walked to the piano, asked the player quietly. Do you know At Last? He nodded. The first notes floated through the air. Then Riley began to sing. Her voice was liquid gold, rich and haunting. It didn't demand attention, it commanded it. One by one, conversation stopped. Glasses paused halfway to lips. Even Jessica stood frozen, her smile turning brittle. The song spoke of longing, of finding home, of love that arrives when you've stopped looking for it. Riley's voice carried every word like a prayer. When the final note faded, silence stretched for a heartbeat too long. Then applause erupted. Genuine, startled, moved. Riley returned to Rodrigo, cheeks flushed. He leaned close. You were incredible. I just sang. You reminded them what real sounds like. They walked through downtown Chicago under a light rain, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement. The tension from the party had melted into something softer. Well, Riley said, looking up at the cloudy sky. That was unexpected. You mean your show-stopping performance or Jessica's face during it? Both. She grinned. You okay? You went quiet after. I was listening to how you silenced a room without raising your voice. Rain began falling harder. Rodrigo shrugged off his jacket, holding it over her like an umbrella. You'll get soaked, she protested. I'll survive. You sang for me. Least I can do. They walked closer together, sharing his jacket, sharing the quiet moment. Can I ask you something? Riley said. Always. Are you still pretending? Rodrigo was quiet for a long moment. I don't know what this is, he said finally. But tonight with you, I haven't felt this light in years. They reached a small jazz club tucked between a bookstore and a cafe. Faded brick, neon sign buzzing softly. I sing here Thursdays, Riley said. Want to see the real thing? Inside, the club was all worn wood and dim lighting. The bartender waved at Riley. A few regulars smiled. It smelled like old leather and new dreams. Riley disappeared behind a curtain, emerging minutes later in jeans and a simple black top. No glamour, no stylists. Just her. The lights dimmed. She began to sing something bluesy, her fingers tapping the rhythm, her expression unguarded. Rodrigo sat at the bar, watching. Not because she was dazzling, though she was, but because she was real. And so was this feeling in his chest. The corporate gala was held at the Art Institute, all marble floors and soaring ceilings. Rodrigo guided Riley through the crowd of suits and champagne glasses. Just smile and nod, he whispered. We'll leave whenever you want. But Riley felt the shift immediately. Eyes followed them. Whispers trailed behind. A woman in Armani leaned toward her husband, speaking behind manicured fingers. Rodrigo's colleagues drifted over with calculated smiles and practiced questions. What do you do, Riley? How did you two meet? Have you always lived in Chicago? Riley answered gracefully, but each word felt like walking a tightrope. When she mentioned singing, someone laughed. How charming. I do love a good dive bar performance. Rodrigo's jaw tightened, but Riley touched his arm, her signal to let it pass. An hour in, someone mentioned hedge funds. Another referenced their house in Aspen. Riley smiled, nodded, but said little. She felt like a curiosity, a novelty brought for entertainment. Wanna dance? Rodrigo asked when the music started. I need air, Riley said, already moving toward the balcony. By the time Rodrigo caught up, she was gripping the railing, breathing hard. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be. You didn't do anything wrong. She gestured toward the party. But this isn't my world, Rodrigo. I don't fit here. I thought you might enjoy it. I saw it, she replied. Cold lights, colder smiles. I don't want to feel like a zoo animal every time I speak. Rodrigo reached out, but she stepped back. I need real things, she said. Places where I can sing and mean it. Where people don't wait for me to stumble so they can gossip about it later. So what do we do? Riley met his eyes. You go back in. I go home. She left him standing on the balcony, her words echoing in the night air. The next evening, Riley was back at her jazz club, guitar in hand, crowd small and familiar. Halfway through her second song, she spotted him. Rodrigo stood by the entrance, still in his work clothes, but somehow different, softer. When her set ended, the bartender handed her a note. Rooftop. 1 floor up. Curious, she climbed the narrow stairs. The roof had been transformed. Fairy lights strung between poles. A small stage set up with a single chair and microphone. Rodrigo stood there, hands in his pockets, almost shy. I rented it for the night, he said. Thought if you couldn't find yourself in my world, maybe I could find you in yours. Riley's breath caught. Just for me? For you to be you. And for me to remember why I fell for that in the first place. She sat on the chair, fingers finding the guitar strings naturally. Under the Chicago sky, Surrounded by twinkling lights and the distant hum of traffic, Riley sang. Not for strangers, not for approval, but for the man who had just made the loudest gesture without saying much at all. Rodrigo stood in his office, exhaustion weighing on his shoulders. His sister Catherine entered with her usual precision. Designer suit, perfect hair, razor-sharp focus. "We need to talk about her," she said without preamble. "Her name is Riley. She's not right for you." Catherine set down her files. "You've worked your entire life to get where you are. Now you're risking everything for someone who sings in coffee shops. She's not a risk. She's the only thing that makes sense anymore. She's not sustainable, Rodrigo. Do you know what people are saying? That you've lost your edge. That this, whatever this is a distraction. Maybe I wanted to be distracted. Maybe I'm tired of chasing expectations that never made me happy. She'll be crushed in our world. She doesn't belong, and deep down you know it." Neither noticed the office door was slightly open. In the hallway, clutching a bag of takeout lunch, stood Riley. She'd wanted to surprise him, maybe steal a quiet moment together. But those words, "she doesn't belong," hit like ice water. Riley turned and fled, the bag slipping from her fingers as she ran. For 6 days, Rodrigo searched. Calls went to voicemail. Texts went unanswered. The jazz club hadn't seen her. The coffee shop near her apartment was empty of her music. He sat on a bench in Millennium Park, the same spot where she'd once told him she sang not for fame, but so someone in the darkness might feel less alone. He held a sketch she'd given him, a drawing of him from their first dinner. Not the CEO, but the man underneath. The one who stirred soup quietly, who smiled when no one was looking. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the wind. "I let them speak louder than my heart." He stood, jaw set with new determination. "If you won't come to me, I'll come to you." Saturday afternoon, the neighborhood buzzed with a community music festival. Booths lined the streets, children ran between vendors, and a small crowd gathered around a makeshift stage. Rodrigo hadn't planned to be there. He'd been walking aimlessly, trying to quiet the ache in his chest. But something made him stop. A voice, soft, raw, achingly familiar. Riley stood on the wooden platform, eyes closed, pouring her heart into a ballad about finding light in someone's shadow. She wore a simple blue dress, her grandmother's necklace catching the afternoon sun. Rodrigo pushed through the crowd until he stood just below the stage. When she opened her eyes and saw him, her voice caught. But she kept singing. As the final note faded, he spoke clearly, for everyone to hear. "I hired you to help me pretend, to fool a room full of people into thinking we were in love. But the only person who got fooled was me." Riley stared down at him, tears welling. "I thought I was buying a performance, but you made me feel like myself again. You made me laugh, made me think, made me see the world through new eyes." His voice cracked. "Then I let them tell me you weren't enough. But the truth is, Riley, I was afraid you'd realize I wasn't enough for you." Someone in the crowd gasped softly. "I don't want to pretend anymore," Rodrigo continued. "I don't care what parties you fit into or what people expect. I only care about how I feel when you sing, how I feel when I look at you. It's real. It's the only real thing I've ever had." Riley set down the microphone and stepped off the stage. One step, then another, until she was close enough to fall into his arms. The crowd erupted in applause, but they didn't hear it. They were holding too tightly. "I'm sorry it took so long," Rodrigo whispered into her hair. Riley looked up, voice soft and sure. "I was just waiting for the truth." 2 years later, the neighborhood had changed. Where sirens once echoed, laughter now filled the air. Music drifted from open windows, and at the center of it all was a converted warehouse with a painted sign. Riley's Music Corner. Inside, Children sat cross-legged with guitars too big for their arms, following Riley's gentle guidance. Classes were free. No child ever turned away. What most didn't know was that every instrument, every music sheet, every light bulb was quietly funded by Rodrigo. He never signed his name to anything. Their home was a modest apartment near the park, 2 rooms, a small balcony, and a kitchen where they still cooked together. Riley attempting to flip pancakes too early, Rodrigo cleaning up without complaint. Every evening, she'd sing as he sat beside her, notebook in hand, scribbling lyrics he never thought he could write. They called it evening rehearsal, though most nights ended in laughter and unfinished songs. But tonight was different. A community concert in the park. No suits, no spotlights, just neighbors on blankets under string lights swaying in the breeze. Rodrigo sat in the middle row. No name tag or title, just jeans and a folded program. When Riley stepped onto the small stage with her guitar and that same silver necklace, everything else faded away. She found him instantly in the crowd. No one else existed. The song was new, one they'd written together on their apartment floor. Not about heartbreak or longing, but about stillness, about finally finding a place to land. Her voice wrapped around the park like a lullium for the weary. People stopped talking. Children leaned against their parents. Couples held hands. But Rodrigo only watched her. She wasn't pretending anymore. Wasn't proving anything. She was just home. As the final note faded and applause filled the night air, Riley stood under the soft glow of the lights, bowing gently. Rodrigo's eyes glistened, but he didn't move. He was smiling, deeply, peacefully, because he knew this wasn't just a concert. It was their life. And he was no longer watching from the outside. He leaned back, heart full, and whispered to himself, "She was once the voice that made me stop. Now she's the reason I never want to walk away." The music faded, but the feeling remained. Love that found them when they least expected it, in the most honest place of all. The truth of a voice and the courage to listen.